The road to adulthood is as long as the Milky Way, beautiful and unpredictable. We need to choose the direction correctly and follow our stars. Now we're on the eve of success. Our glorious alma mater, BELGOROD State University, gives its students self-reliance and helps them to gain self-confidence. BSU is our guiding stellar constellation. In 1876, the Teachers Training Institute opened in Belgorod, the ninth of its kind in Russia. In those days, it was a specialized boarding school to train village teachers for 3 years, as well as those who worked in towns. It was not only an institute, but also offered practical classes to the townspeople, financed by the treasury. Vasily Mikhailovich Machurin, an eminent merchant, philanthropist, and honorary freeman, donated his own building to the new educational institution. The selection of students was strict. 8 entrance examinations, the ability to sing and read music, and also good health ensured a place. There were 3 to 4 and sometimes even 8 applicants for each place. Female applicants were not accepted to the institute. Honours graduates were awarded a silver commemorative medal for merit with the image of Emperor Alexander III. One of the most prominent graduates of the Teachers Training Institute, the story writer Ivan Vasilenko, called Belgorod Gradobelsk in one of his stories. I have been walking the streets of Gradobelsk and counting the churches. In 3 days I've counted 36, though there are no more than 40,000 inhabitants of the town. Mostly you come across priests and monks, and there are a great number of pupils and students in the town. There is a grammar school for boys and 2 for girls, a theological seminary, a vocational school, and a women's church school, all in this small town. At the head of them all is the Teachers Institute, the oldest in Russia. These lines were written in 1914. There were more than 50 teacher training institutes that year in Tsarist Russia. Their graduates were laying the groundwork for public education, which was increasingly in demand in the new country that was emerging during the turbulent years of the Russian revolutions. Educational reform was carried out by the provisional government. Female students got the opportunity to be admitted to the institute after the bourgeois revolution in February. The staff shortage was so severe that the number of places for students entering in that year increased to 200. The main goal of the Soviets was the eradication of illiteracy. In the 1920s, teacher training institutes were reorganized into colleges, specializing in training teachers for orphanages, village and nursery schools. A new breed of teachers was trained to teach and bring up people from early childhood at the state's expense, with no social distinction. And those were the guiding principles throughout the whole Soviet period. When the Civil War, the new economic policy and collectivization were over, and the country fast became industrialized, the public educational system returned to the need to prepare highly qualified teachers, especially for the senior classes of the 7-year schools. In 1939, teacher training colleges were reorganized back into institutes. They had only 2 departments, physics and mathematics and natural geography. The first students of Belgorod State Pedagogical Institute happened to graduate in the fateful year of 1941. All 140 young teachers left for the front after receiving their diplomas. Only a very few lived to see victory. Every stage of Belgorod State University's history is closely connected with the history of the city and country itself. Having halted all activities at the beginning of the war, the institute resumed work in 1943 in Stary Oskol, where it would remain for another 14 years, until returning to the rebuilt city of Belgorod. It was then located in the pre-revolutionary building of the Men's Regional Lyceum. It was then located in the pre-revolutionary building of the Men's Regional Lyceum, which is still part of the university. The post-war decades are remembered for the educational boom. Young people sought knowledge and to pursue a profession, and so higher education institutes had to respond to this need. The student community represented a bright future for the country, and pedagogical institutes were at the forefront of the most prestigious educational establishments. Since the beginning of the 1960s, the institute has continued to grow. New faculties were opened, and the first cohort of 220 students was formed, ready to begin construction missions. In the north of Belgorod, new buildings, a dormitory, and a sports complex were built. The street where the institute celebrated its housewarming in 1966 was later renamed Studentskaya Street. The 1960s to 70s were indeed the golden years of the institute's history. That is when new specialisms were introduced. The teaching staff approached 200, and the number of students was close to 3,000. That was the time when the tradition of student induction began. The first edition of the high-circulating Prosvещенец newspaper came out, which has been succeeded by Viesti BSU. Times of extensive plans made way for times of sweeping changes. The end of the 20th century was marked in history by such little understood words as perestroika, acceleration, and openness, and the destructive events of the coup and breakup of the Soviet Union, its economic and political collapse. Education moved backwards. The country was not moved by dreams and plans, but by timid expectations and vague hopes for a better future. Meanwhile, Belgorod Pedagogical Institute stood its ground. Tuition fees were brought in to further develop the educational system. And right at the beginning of the 90s, the university rose to new levels. Two new faculties, which were relevant to the times, were formed: the law school and the medical school. From this time on, the university became more than just a pedagogical institute. In 1996, the 120th anniversary of its foundation, it was awarded the status of a classical university. The local government, under the leadership of Government Evgeny Savchenko, took an active part in building its future. A development cooperation fund was set up at BSU. Literally, in only a few years, the new university campus was built in the center of Belgorod. Next to it, on the bank of the river, the church of Archangel Gavril, the patron of students, was built. At the same time, the first sociology and theology faculty was opened in Russia. The horse riding school was organized in the university. The Nezhigol retreat, with its leisure facilities, was built in a pine forest. The Svetlana Khorkina sports complex was praised by President Putin during one of his visits to the city.
Шикарный совершенно спортивный зал у местного университета. Просто шикарный. И даже Светлане Хоркиной там перед ним еще и памятник поставили. Просто идеальный.
After the construction of new facilities, the university continues to strengthen its position with the opening of new specialisms. In 2010, Belgorod State University became the only regional university in central Russia to be awarded the status of National Research University. In a short while, the university will reach its 150th milestone. What is demanded of it in modern times?
У нас 2/3 студентов должны, начиная со 2-го курса максимум, заниматься научной деятельностью, научными исследованиями. Мы даем на выходе очень качественное образование. Об этом еще говорим, опираясь на факты, рейтинги международные российские, которые оценивают уровень того или иного вуза и его место в научно-образовательном пространстве России.
In the course of its evolution as one of the oldest pedagogical institutes in Russia, ideas about public education have been transformed here throughout the centuries into a modern school of the specialisms and scientific disciplines most in demand, from teacher from training teachers for rural schools to breeding ambitious young scientists and professionals in various fields. BSU is now an alma mater for tens of thousands of students from Russia and abroad. It runs cooperative educational programs with the world's leading universities, which may also include foreign language teaching and academic mobility. BSU is a close-knit team of academicians, professors, and PhDs. It comprises research centers, laboratories, business incubators, classic academic departments, and innovative enterprises. Its educational and scientific potential has enabled BSU to become one of the leading members of the Shanghai Cooperation Council of Universities in 5 areas, and to qualify for membership of the Association of 40 leading Russian universities. Its achievements are acknowledged in authoritative Russian and world academic ratings. A student at Belgorod State University has a lot of opportunities to realize his or her potential. Dozens of student associations are proof of successful self-management and close connections with their mentors. Today, like many years ago, the student card of Belgorod University is a ticket to a great life and a bright future, illuminated by a guiding constellation, the BSU constellation.
Welcome!